welcome to this session. This is Doing Business in Ukraine, the conference, which we're all here for, and this session is Building Ukraine's Security Through a Modernized Economy. So we'll be covering several issues here, especially when it comes to the reconstruction of Ukraine, what the opportunities are, what the challenges are, and how we can all work together with various tools to help build Ukraine. I'm joined by a series of experts and people that are working on the ground there, who live there, and who can bring their own personal perspectives and professional perspectives as well. I'd like to introduce Mike Stenson. He's a project director for Kingspan Group. I'm also joined by Oliver Rapp, the executive director for Buildings Performance Institute Europe. I'm also joined by Serhiy Sivkach, Managing Partner Ukraine, Chicago Atlantic. And also, we are joined by Mayor Natalia Balasinovich, Mayor of Vasilkiv. So thank you everyone. Join me in welcoming our panel today. So just a reminder, if there isn't enough room or you feel that you don't want to be in a conference room anymore, we also have a viewing session downstairs on our first floor. Also, that this session is being recorded and eventually will be on our website, so please stay tuned to do a nice redux in case you missed anything. So Mike, I'm going to turn over to you if you can provide a couple minutes of comments, and to our speakers, just press the button down. When it turns red, you're on.
Thank you very much, and good morning. Thanks for having me here. So I work for Kingspan. We're the global leader in high-performance insulation and building envelope solutions. And I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about Kingspan. You know, we've more than 22,000 people across the world, 220 or more manufacturing sites across 80 countries. And our advanced materials building systems and digital technologies can, help address a lot of the really serious issues globally around climate change and protection of the natural world. And our business model and strategy is focused to enable a transition to ultra high performing building envelopes based on energy efficient and lower carbon materials. Across, we've got 5 operating divisions, and it's important because I'll talk about them in the context of our investment in a minute or so. But we have a range of high-performance building materials, all united by what we call internally our Planet Passionate program. And our mission is to accelerate a net zero emissions future-built environment with the well-being of people and the planet at its heart. So about our investment in Ukraine, we have announced some time ago that we're planning to invest about $300 million in building a new building technology manufacturing campus, which will be located near the city of Lviv, Ukraine. When it's completed, and it'll take a number of years for that to happen, it'll support over 700 jobs, which will provide, I think, a significant contribution to the local economy. And then we will need lots of suppliers, right? So there's probably a 3-to-1 ratio. Internally, our project is codenamed Saoirse, which in our Gaelic language in Ireland means freedom from oppression. The manufacturing campus will make advanced insulation, different other types of building materials, and district heating piping solutions, all with a focus on energy efficiency. We believe that the material products produced there will play an important role in Ukraine's reconstruction effort, and will also help support Kingspan's expansion from what we have today in Eastern Europe, which is substantial. The site where we're going to be located will be a low-carbon campus with renewable energy supplying a lot of the energy there. Our company is working very closely with the Ukraine state and the Ukraine government and Ukraine Invest to deliver that project, and working very closely with the Ministry of the Economy and other relevant support functions there. The thing from our point of view as well is, I think that the products that we manufacture there, right, will provide high value add to exports from the Ukraine economy, which basically will help the economy recover in a post-war situation. and it will, enhance our presence there and our presence across Eastern Europe, as I mentioned. We have been working on the project for almost 2 years now, and we've appointed a team of expert project managers, designers, architects, and other, local and local organizations to help us do the drawings, designs, project plans, etc. And I talked here last year about our plan to purchase land. We did that early this year, and we're now working on the finalization stage to get the approvals and the permits and all of that, let's say, set of documentation that we need to start production. We will have a big internal review at the end of this year to decide, do we continue at full speed, or do we do it a little bit slower and deliver it a little bit later than planned. But if everything goes according to our plan, we'll start next year, and we will commence the production of the first of the 7 factories in the middle of 2026. And I look forward to contributing to the discussion here. Thank you very much.
Mike, that's great, and it's good to see an example of how a company is working there, especially on issues in terms of not just rebuilding Ukraine and also focusing on the energy transition with low carbon energy efficiency, but also how are you situating the country for growing its economy after the war, especially in export-led industries. So really appreciate hearing that. Oliver, I'm going to turn to you next.
Erin, thank you very much for the introduction, and a big thank you to CSIS for the invitation. It's an honor to speak here. I am running a think tank called Buildings Performance Institute Europe, a long name, so we prefer actually the acronym BPIE. That sticks better in people's minds, so BPIE. And we are a think tank. We focus on energy, climate change, renewable energy in buildings. We're focusing only on buildings, and we're working with partners on the green reconstruction of Ukraine. We're working with Ukrainian partners, I would like to underline. The World Bank has estimated that about $80 billion will be needed to reconstruct the residential buildings only. I'm not talking about commercial buildings, only the residential buildings, the homes of the Ukrainians who lost their homes. And so the damage is enormous, but the damage is not only an economic damage or a structural damage, it's also a psychological damage. When people lose their homes, that's quite traumatic, of course. We all know that Ukraine is on its good way to become a full member of the European Union. The official negotiations started in June, and a precondition for any accession country to become a full member of the European Union is the implementation of European law. And of course, when we look at the question, how would Ukraine reconstruct its buildings? The recently agreed Energy Performance of Buildings Directive is one of the main legislative files which have to be implemented. The good news is Ukraine is already implementing earlier versions of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive, so the country would not have to start from scratch. But it means that national housing standards will have to follow the standards of the European Union. And what has been agreed now, actually earlier in 2024, is that the new standard for buildings in the EU will be a zero-emission building, which will have to be achieved as of 2030. Also, this new legislation requires the renovation of the worst performing buildings in any EU member states in a stepwise approaches, and how these worst performing buildings are defined is also explained in the legislation. So there are quite some stringent requirements for buildings in principle, and Ukraine will have to follow them. I know there is currently a law which in the Ukraine which says that when buildings have been damaged through war activities, energy efficiency standards, for example, do not have to be applied. But with Ukraine entering the EU, this will have to change over time. So that means that any public donor funding or any private sector investment should actually align with the EU regulation, should support the implementation of the EU, because there are a number of benefits when we build greener, more resilient buildings. Well, the very first benefit is that energy generation will become more decentralized and therefore also more resilient. Higher energy efficiency standards will lead to lower peak loads and therefore requiring lower investments in the grid as such, and all that will lead to increased resilience. But of course, we can look at the technical requirements, we can look at the energy standards and the renewable energy supply. I think what we need to also keep in mind is that Ukrainian citizens need healthy and sustainable buildings, which help them overcome the trauma and which actually helps them to leave the Soviet-style housing behind. Because that is a thing of the past. Normally these buildings perform very poorly and do not provide very safe and healthy buildings. And so investing in a green reconstruction would also encourage the 6.5 million of Ukrainians who have left their home to come back, because they can clearly see there will be a better future. And from our perspective, and when we talk with the Ukrainian partners, we see a big desire in Ukrainian society to simply rebuild better buildings, and therefore whatever the private sector does, whatever public donors do, should respect that wish and that desire and support that vision for better buildings in Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. You've given us a lot to think about. One, we always welcome other think tanks here, so we're not exclusive, and also welcome the acronym BPIE. CSIS is also kind of a mouthful. And I think Ukrainians would really welcome something other than Soviet-style buildings. I mean, you know, I'm not an architect, but they're not the nicest. But you note the number 80 billion in terms of what's needed for residential buildings, and that's an enormous amount. So as donors are thinking, as multilateral development banks and real estate developers are thinking of this, you know, I think Oliver has given us a good outline of the things that we need to consider in terms of EU standards, zero emissions, but also the type of quality that is not just going to be required, but needed for the population that, as Oliver said, has been traumatized through war. For anybody who's lost their house, whether to a fire, an accident, or whatnot, you know how emotional that can be. So appreciate your comments, Oliver. Serhii, if I can turn over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank CSIS and Dan Randa, Romina Bandura, and the whole team for organizing this event for the second time. You're doing a great job. You're promoting Ukraine, you're bringing a lot of attention to Ukraine, and this is what we need right now, because we cannot afford fatigue about Ukraine, and specifically about reconstruction of Ukraine. That is very important. Today, I'm honored to represent Chicago Atlantic Trident. Chicago Atlantic Trident is a Ukrainian arm of Chicago Atlantic investment firm. It's a US-based investment firm with AUM around $2 billion, with a focus on different sectors in the United States. Two funds are on NASDAQ, so it's a very reputable investment company. And now they are building impact strategy for Ukraine. We're talking about $250 million plus investment fund, private equity fund, that is focused on the following sectors. So we are planning to invest in affordable housing, so absolutely. We want to make sure that the buildings in Ukraine will be built according to new standards, green standards, and people of Ukraine will have ability to return to their homes and enjoy their peaceful life after we win this war. Also, we are focused on agri-processing and food security, construction of building materials, and logistics, industrial logistics, things like warehousing, dry ports, any elevators, you know, that are needed for agri-processing sector, and things alike. We can invest between $5 to $40 million in one project. We are looking for strong, solid Ukrainian and foreign companies that are doing business in Ukraine and are ready to work with private equity firms. We have a reputable team, highly experienced. We have people like former president of World Bank on our team, David Malpass, and the rest of very highly professional investment bankers and investment professionals in the US and in Ukraine. We're building a stronger team in Ukraine right now. And today it would be great to talk about the role of private equity in the rebuilding of Ukraine. We're talking about different figures, every time they change between $500 billion to $1 trillion and beyond. And that's maybe even higher, day by day as we sit here. So Ukraine cannot be rebuilt using state money alone. We need to bring private capital. And blended finance, concessional capital, this is what is very important for rebuilding Ukrainian industry. We are focused on SMEs specifically. We think that it's a real backbone of Ukrainian economy that needs support, but a lot of work needs to be done in addition to what's happening now. So we need to make sure that all international organizations support this activity, that more private equity funds are entering Ukraine, because private equity funds is not only about capital, it's about being a partner in the company. When we invest, we become part of the family, business family, who we work with. We support development of corporate governance, business operations, we support their activities on the ground. So looking forward to our discussion today and talking more in detail about what we can do and how we can move forward in order to not only rebuild, but economically transform Ukraine. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those comments. I think private equity will see a lot of opportunities here, but as our panelists have already highlighted, the needs are huge. And so it really will take the proverbial village to work together to try to rebuild, and also to make sure that it's done in a way that matches the standards that are going to be the future of Ukraine. So I really appreciate those comments. Madam Mayor, I turn over to you.
Good day, dear ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to say thank you very much to United States that Ukraine exists, that our teachers and doctors has salaries, that our soldiers and defenders on all fronts of our country has weapons. And I want to say thank you very much to CSIS that I'm here, and that I can present the real life of one small community in 20 kilometers from the capital of Ukraine, 50,000 population, how we are living. I'm a city mayor of Vasilkiv, and I never dreamed to be a mayor. I wanted to change my native town, and as was told here, my message on election was that I want to transform ex-Soviet Union old town to unique European town, and to change infrastructure and to change everything. And to be honest, we succeed. During only 1 year, that's the only period I was mayor in normal period, not during the war. We built the railway station, City Express, to downtown of the capital. It's 37 minutes only, and a lot of good infrastructure projects, as parks, stadiums, kindergartens, etc. But unfortunately, Russian intervention completely changed our dreams, our lifestyle, because in our community we have military airfield, and we are a military community, because there are a lot of strategic for all Ukraine military bases situated in our community. And for Putin and for his team, Vasilkiv became a target on the map, because they want to land 10,000 of Russian descent in our community in the first day of the war, and to place them on our military bases, to control them, and to make a circle around the Kiev. That's why 10% of Russian rockets during the first months of intervention were sent to Vasilkiv, a small community, and of course a lot of our infrastructure were completely destroyed, and such as schools, hospital, multi-residential houses, and many of them. But if you come now to Vasilkiv, you will not find all this because we already made all the montage and we already make new project and we start the building. But what is a very important message that the cost of one, for example, completely destroyed school is the cost of 1 year of our local budget. So you understand that we cannot survive by ourselves, and we have not only one school completely destroyed, we have a lot of them. The same that the cost of the building of one, okay, let's say 5 or 9 floor residential building is also equal to our 1 year local budget. So we cannot survive without your help, but we are not crying. We are living, we are believing ourselves, we are helping to the front. It's our main target now. Unfortunately, mainly 2-3 times per week we have funerals. Even today I'm here, and our best defenders go, I hope, to paradise for our best future together with the United States, with Europe, but never with Russia. And how we live, I have to say very honest, that the mood of our soldiers, the mood of our citizens, even my mood of my daughter, depend on the messages from United States. It's honest. Why? Let's say that during night we don't sleep because you know that we have these rockets attacks, and we have to go to the office, we have to work, we have to find new opportunities, we have to find money, we have to do all this routine. But if we feel the support from United States, it gives us as a fresh air, you know, it's honest. You can ask every, I know, child or grandma or soldier on the front. So we appreciate very much what you are doing for our country. Please support us. Please never leave us. And we will win. We don't have other way, only this way. Anyway, we will fight till the last Ukrainian, I always say this. We don't have other option. And Ukraine will change. We will build another country, not only about buildings, about transparency, about mentality. We change a lot, and we are working hard to win this war. So what we can offer to American business, we can offer the land. We are very well situated in good location, only 20 kilometers from the capital, in Odessa highway. And we are inviting American business to work in our community. From our side, we can give the land even free of charge for rent or other options. But we need investors. We need taxes, because this year the budget, our local budget, is reduced on 74% comparing to the last year. So it's mean economy going down, unfortunately. But it's not the main money, the main your support. And the main, when, you know, my daughter go to the school every morning, and what every mom feel in Ukraine, I tell you, after the rockets attack, every mom has the feeling this rocket now will come to the school where her daughter or son is. Okay, we have shelters, but unfortunately Russian rockets are very strong, and we don't know where it will come. So please never stop to help Ukraine to build shelters, to rebuild infrastructure, to rebuild school. Our children want to live in Ukraine, and just all of us, we want to live. And you are the chance for us to win this war. And infrastructure is very important. It's number one. But the number one is our country, our freedom, our independence, and our existence. Thank you very much.
Madam Mayor, thank you so much for providing that on-the-ground perspective. I think it's worth a reminder to know what is at stake, hear what's happening on the ground, and know that it's not just, of course, we're talking about buildings and reconstruction to help a country get back on its feet, but there's a real human cost here. So I really appreciate your frank remarks on this. I'm going to continue with you to ask you a question. I mean, it's clear that your town has been greatly affected by the violence and the destruction. You know, we hear this firsthand with the rockets, your proximity to the Capitol. You gave us a good view of what's been impacted both on the personal side, but also, you know, for the people of your town, and also on the infrastructure side. So I'd like to ask you, as a mayor, you have to prioritize what's going to be rebuilt. And that may not just even be buildings, that will be rebuilding, you know, the confidence of the people. So what are the short-term and the long-term needs of, say for your town, but I would say that this probably extends to others as well?
My town and our main needs for today for rebuilding, of course, destroyed completely schools. We have two that we cannot afford to find any money for that. Also, hospitals. Let's say that during the last rocket attack, we had 300 buildings damaged. Some of them completely, some not. It's just you for your imagination. Okay. So the 30% of our heating system were completely destroyed. Some of them we already renovate, but for some, of course, we need help. Water system also were destroyed, like on 35%, and some of our parts of our community, the people don't have water. Some of them has the color like this table. So we need new water system for our town, and of course, multi-residential buildings. People need houses to live, first of all, and also in our community we have more than 5,000 IDPs from all over Ukraine, Mariupol and other cities, and they are living in my community in model houses. So also this is our citizens already, they need help. So schools, hospital, rebuilding, we already trying to rebuild our hospital, multi-residential houses, water system, heating system, no, and of course electricity system, but okay, we can survive, and we hope that the winter it will be not so strong and at least few hours per day we will have the electricity. We can just a lot of problems, and even one small help with $100 it will change our situation, believe us. I'm honest with you. Just come to our town. I invite all of you. It's very near to the capital. While you will be in Ukraine, you will be my guest. I will show you how we live. I will show you how we fight, and I will show you how we believe in ourselves together with your help. Thank you.
Okay, everyone, you have your checklist. Schools, heating system, water system, basically, essentially basic services to the people of the town. Thank you for that. Mike, I'm going to turn to you. Given the damage to infrastructure and interruption of services, you, among others on this panel, are focused on logistics, but also the rebuilding side. And I say opportunities here in that I can't think of another word. It sounds strange to say in a war zone, but what are the opportunities, but also the needs for investment for companies, and what are the key considerations your company and others should consider when investing in Ukraine?
So I think in terms of the opportunities, and it's probably debate around the use of the word, but I think it's probably the most appropriate right now here. The opportunities I think are very wide-ranging. You'll have heard from Sergei earlier about some of the areas that his company is involved in supporting and raising finance and so on for. I can only talk about our area of building materials, of steel, insulation, building, daylighting products, membranes on roofs and so on. And the opportunities there are widespread, right, to be honest, right? I mean, we've heard and seen the facts and the numbers about the scale of the destruction. Kingspan predominantly operates in the industrial and commercial as opposed to the residential space. We do have some residential solutions. So, but we still see within that space tremendous opportunities for those building materials. We also see tremendous opportunities for SMEs. And again, Sergei mentioned about how they can be the lifeblood, if you like, of the economy, as they are in many countries. And we will work with, in future years, SMEs who can supply goods and services. And I suppose what would we need in that context? And really, from supply point of view, we need, high quality, constant, good deliveries, on time, all the usual supply chain stuff that companies ask for. And we may have to, spend time and some money educating, training, local suppliers to, get up to that level. But that's what we want, and that's what we will demand, and that's what will be needed in a European type system operating in post-war Ukraine. It goes without saying as well that we need and will demand of our suppliers good corporate governance in terms of how they behave, how they work, how they interact with us, etc. So there are some of the opportunities and needs. I think for people thinking about investing, whether it's in the mayor's village or town or many of the other hundreds of places across the country, based on our experience, there's a few considerations that people should think about, right, about investing. I think you need to engage with local experts in terms of planning, design, architecture, legal, and so on. Some of us have tried in the past to do something, only with external experts, and the reality is it doesn't work. You need people from there, and we're lucky. We've put a team of 12 people between Kyiv and Lviv working on our project, and it's been fantastic. It's been a tremendous experience for us so far on that side of it. I think the scarcity of, and this is changing, but it still is an issue, the scarcity of serviced land with all the utilities around power, road, rail, water, gas, sewage, right? And we hear from the mayor in terms of the issues in those for the in terms of basic needs for people, right? But if the country wants to develop, they are considerations that external people have to think about. And I think finally the other point is, Ukraine is a very bureaucratic country in terms of documentation and approvals and so on. But it is what it is. And again, going back to the experts, you've got to trust them to understand what it is that's needed and execute in terms of doing that. We're not in a position to change it, so you've got to figure out with the experts in terms of planning laws and rules and regulations and all that stuff, how you do it to make it happen. And that's what we've got to do. So I think there are some of the, to answer your question, opportunities, some of our needs, and then some of the considerations that you have to think about before you invest.
Actually, I want to follow up on one point with you and also Sergei as well, because you mentioned SMEs, and it's the backbone of quite a few economies. And I think what we saw in terms of the post-COVID recovery, that SMEs were, the ones that survived, really flourished and helped that economic recovery. What kind of sectors, what kind of industries are these SMEs in? Mike and Sergei, if you could follow up on that.
I'm sure they're very widespread. I mean, I can only talk about in terms of our industry. We will need lots of suppliers from everything from cardboard boxes to, tool workshops, for example, right? And we may have to build that ecosystem or help suppliers build that ecosystem in future years. And there'll be other larger external companies like ourselves who will want to do that as well. But I'm sure it's widespread, and maybe Sergei can talk more about how widespread it is across different industries.
Sure.
Yeah, it's definitely widespread. What I need to say that during the war, maybe not many people witnessed, but we have seen the end of the era of oligarchs, at least old ones that were in Ukraine. That is very important. We need to make sure that new ones will not be created. That is important, yeah, so we don't have to go there again. And SMEs, that's the key. We still have big companies in Ukraine. You have big companies that are listed on international exchanges and so on, so they have to do business, not to be involved in politics, not to control media and so on. So, this is what should be happening. Pan Roman in the room, he can say a lot about that and issues of businesses in Ukraine. He's doing actually a very great job. Thank you for that. And SMEs, definitely all sectors. It's very hard to name the most impactful sector in Ukraine right now because any sector is important, starting with IT and agri-processing and all different things. But there is a different mentality. When we talk about SMEs in IT sector and fintech sector, these are mostly young people, Western oriented, they speak English well and so on, so it's easier to work with them. But we need to work with kind of traditional sectors, like I said, construction materials and agriculture and so on. Very different mindset of business owners. And the more we work with them, the more we explain how it is important to be transparent, pay taxes, improve corporate governance, and what is the benefit. Because if they see benefits in terms of getting extra debt finance or private equity, then they would do that. They would adjust. But they are sometimes worried about development because, well, we can say that Ukraine was going through difficult times, very turbulent times since 1991. And we have seen changing the vector of the development of the country from Russia to the West, then back to Russia, then to the West, and different people were changing in government. So businesses were not as reliant on government, and we need to change that. We need to make sure that government of Ukraine is the best friend of businesses in Ukraine. And also we need to improve this trust between business and government and show how to attract investment in order to flourish. Because if some companies, they don't pay taxes, the other companies pay taxes. This is unfair advantage. It shouldn't happen. And if you pay taxes, but you can attract additional capital, but still you will not be as profitable if you don't pay taxes. So this is a very important thing, level playing field. So answering your question, any SMEs are important in Ukraine. You have investable cases in any sector. It depends where you come from, where your investment is coming from. So if you want to talk to them directly, we as doing business in Ukraine always happy to support you. And government of Ukraine is very changed now as well. So I'm sure that the Ministry of Economy, Ukraine Invest, all other agencies, they are happy to support you on the ground, and please do get in touch with them or with us, and we'll be happy to put you in touch with them. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to come back on one point that I didn't make that is important, at least in the short term, which is, the country is under military, under martial law, right? And that has its own requirements and whatever. So in addition to all those other considerations I talked about, you got to do what you have to do under the constraints imposed by martial law. But again, it's not impossible. It just makes it more difficult. With your team of experts, you understand what that is, and you just have to work through it, right? And it's just an extra complication, but it's a minimal complication compared to what the actual people living, in the country have to put up with every hour of every day. So it's just one additional consideration.
Thank you for that. Oliver, I'm going to turn to you, kind of moving back a little bit and getting into more the decarbonization, energy efficiency. We talked about water systems. We talked about the needs around heating systems. I mean, just to get a very real world example here, there's obviously a great number of needs and also a great number of opportunities here. But there's also an opportunity here to plan for the future of cities and the country, and a lot of this is centered around, not just in Ukraine, but globally, on the energy transition and decarbonization. So where do you see that prospects in the market? What types of decarbonization technology are we talking about? And what are the opportunities there and the potential hurdles as well?
Thank you, Erin. I think when we look at the construction sector, there is no shortage of zero carbon solutions today. Often the arguments against these solutions are, well, it's too costly or it doesn't pay back immediately. That of course means that we have a very short-sighted cost-benefit analysis, because if we really want to rebuild Ukraine in a resilient and sustainable way, it can only follow green guidelines and the latest technologies. And if we do that, if Ukraine does that, then it will have all these additional benefits. So the technologies are there. Also, the workforce in Ukraine is an extremely well-trained workforce, right? I mean, we've been working with Ukrainian partners well before the war, and the efforts which were made in implementing energy efficiency technologies and renovating buildings were enormous, you know, as good as in many EU countries. So there are no real barriers to that, other than that the investment needs to flow into the right projects. And so I think any investor would be well advised to take all these additional multi-benefits into account, and not just have a return of investment expectation of a few years. But it's of course equally important that Ukraine itself sets these standards and works with the donors and the investors to meet the green criteria. That's absolutely essential. But as I said before, it's not only to comply with the latest EU legislation. It's also to avoid lock-in, negative lock-in, and to avoid stranded assets. Because if we were to rebuild below best standards available today, then it would mean that these buildings would have to be renovated again in 10, 15 years. And that would then mean another costly investment. So I think if we really follow the latest guidelines, deploy the latest technologies, and make sure that the multilateral donor money is really earmarked for these kind of projects, that's very, very important, that donor money is not just going into any projects, but really into resilience building and sustainable projects, then we are on a good track.
Excellent, thank you. And I think that's really where World Bank has been focusing. But just a note for anybody who's working in the multilateral development space, that decarbonization, energy efficiency, there are a lot of opportunities here and a way to build, again, the future of cities. We have a little less than 10 minutes left. I don't know if there's a microphone out there, but I'd like to take some questions from the audience. If there's not a microphone, I have one, and I would like if you could ask into the microphone so that on the recording we can hear. Is there one? I guess we did not plan for that. Do you mind coming up here? Sorry for that.
My name's Roman Vashchuk, and I'd first like to briefly elucidate the cryptic reference to me made by Mr. Tsivkac,
Yes.
which is that I am the business, I have my behind turned to you, not very nice. I'm the business ombudsman of Ukraine, an independent institution designed to deal with some of the formalities when they go wrong in Ukraine. So we're supported by the EBRD, by the US, by the EU, and work on administrative issues. So my question would be, what are the main administrative obstacles that you've encountered since 22 in attempting to put projects together and then actually make them happen?
Would anyone like to take that? Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I think probably the biggest challenge we faced, it wasn't really in, at least up to now, hasn't been in the area of bureaucracy or any of that stuff, right? As I said, once you get to know what you have to do, you got to do it, right? The biggest challenge we faced was to find suitable land, right? we ended up choosing to buy land that had effectively no services, which we are working with the state. We'll recoup the cost of those under the investment nanny agreement, as it's called. But the point about that is that we're going to have to invest the money and the capital up front, right? But that's probably the biggest challenge that we've had to face up to now. Thanks.
I'll comment on that. So, but from more general perspective, because I led Ukraine Invest for about 4 years, so I have heard many stories from businesses, good and bad. We have a lot of good stories in Ukraine. Well, it's fairly easy now in Ukraine compared to previous years to get permissions and so on. You can register as an entrepreneur within 4 seconds online. So we have digitalized our country significantly. Within the last 5 years, we are now, I think, in position number 5 compared to position 197 in about 3 years ago. So it's like more than 90 places just within in ranks within a couple of years. So I think it's doable. For me, as a person that hears a lot and being part of the all business associations in Ukraine on the ground, so I think that the biggest challenge for Ukraine, enforcement agencies. Companies will come to Ukraine, they will do business in Ukraine, but they only come to Ukraine when they talk to government, and then they talk to businesses. They talk to businesses that already operate in Ukraine. And this word of mouth, positive word of mouth, is very important, because when you hear from businesses that already operate in Ukraine, yes, this is a good country to operate in, they make decision quick. But when we hear stories when enforcement agencies, they enter buildings and offices of the companies, and they may take some documents away just for no reason, and we're not talking about only Ukrainian companies, also international companies. So I think Ukraine should pay attention more to that, and that would be the best investment nanny exercise. Thank you.
Okay, I feel like a talk show host. How are you doing, everyone? All right.
Thank you so much. My name is Katerina Odarchenko. I explore issues of affordable housing because like our family before did construction for 30 years in Kherson region. But I'm interested in your understanding of financing of affordable housing, because now it's several options. So it's private capital, which also pretty shortage in Ukraine. Second option, it's DFC loans, which from 7 till 8%. But with insurance, but you need like 40-50% equity, which also so for Ukrainian condition, and they're ready to finance only pretty safe territories. Or third, it's government mortgage programs, which go not to developer but to customer. So how you see like more activation of housing and affordable housing building, because in this situation anyway every developer needs from 40% equity and directly cash to put in, and that's why it's not so much projects of affordable housing. And do you think about concept of maybe government housing bank, which was tested by World Bank program in Africa? So maybe you think about that also. Yeah.
Okay, the question of affordable housing, and I think unfortunately that will be our last question. There is a networking break, so folks, affordable housing.
Yeah, because we explored this sector, extensively, and I think that the state mortgage program, they do a great job. They need more finance. Because they were given some bonds and they use proceeds from the bonds in order to subsidize these loans for families of veterans, medical staff, and so on. So they're actually here today. Yevgen Mezger and his deputy Oleg Zhorolov, they're here, so it's a good thing to talk to them. So that is one way to provide mortgages to people. In terms of companies and developers, usually in Ukraine there is no shortage of money for development. We have shortage of demand now. And it's very much linked to the war itself. When we had, for example, information, you remember last year, the counteroffensive, all these things, so the market was growing rapidly. A lot of money stuck in Ukraine. business money, private money, because you cannot take money abroad. It's the National Bank of Ukraine regulation. So I don't think there is a shortage of cash in Ukraine to buy property, but it's all connected to the mood of people as well, you know, and how they feel. This is related to people that have money. Also, we have different kind of layer of people that are short of cash. So we need to focus more, support programs like the state mortgage program, you know, in order for them to be able to issue more mortgages. I think they issued about 10,000 mortgages so far, which is not nearly enough for Ukraine and what we need. And also, we need to make sure again that affordable housing is built according to best practices. You know, so that is important. We should not be built in like ghettos that will become like in a couple of years. It should be good residential buildings. So it's very broad question, and should be split in different topics. But for now, I would support state mortgage program of Ukraine in order for them to be able to issue more mortgages.
All right, and we are at time. Folks, thank you to our panelists for joining us today and providing your expertise and experiences. And join me in thanking them. Please enjoy the rest of today's conference. Thank you very much for attending today.